Hey everyone, and welcome to another Yogi Misfit Sessions. My name is Danny Pomploon, and I am your host. Today I'm actually coming at you with session 1 of the Yogi Misfit and Fierce Calm collaboration. So we'll be featuring one of their stories, one of their main stories, and then a couple little stories at the end of the show as well. I am a global ambassador for Fierce Calm. They're a platform that shares how yoga can save, and there's so many cool stories on there. People that have survived and have got through so many things, from eating disorders to drug habits to injuries. It's just a really cool platform to share about how yoga can really change, impact, and save people's lives. Today I have Joseph Armstrong on the show, and he is an ashtanga practitioner. He's based out of Guatemala right now, which is why we have a little bit of an internet thing going on. But he's on the show, and he shares his story of how he hit his rock bottom and eventually ended up finding ashtanga yoga, practicing with mentors like Kino McGregor, and has completely turned his entire life around doing it. A quick little reminder to get more people to share their stories, to get more people to listen to their podcasts, to have more people impacted by these stories. Please leave a review for us on iTunes. There's a link down below that shows you how to do it. The more reviews we get, the more the show gets broadcasted, the more people hear about it. So we would totally appreciate just a little bit of love and support down there. And then last but not least, just big love to our friends and family over at Fierce Calm. We are so excited about this collaboration. Without further ado, here goes the Fierce Calm collab, episode 1. Hey Joseph, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi there. I'm doing good, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing all right, hanging out. It's a cloudy day in San Francisco. It's freezing cold, but that's okay.
Nice. Well, I'm here in Antigua, Guatemala. And what's nice here is that they call this the land of eternal spring. So it's pretty much nice year-round here.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been to Guatemala. I haven't been to Guatemala yet. Maybe I was there in passing. No, I lied. Haven't been in Guatemala.
Okay. Well, it's nice. You should come sometime. It's there's lots of active volcanoes. So I live right at the foot of this huge volcano. Her name is Agua, oddly enough. And
Yeah.
There's a couple more around us. There's one active one called Fuego, and they're gorgeous.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I think the furthest I'm down there, well, I was in Costa Rica, but a few times. I go there a couple times a year, but I mean, pretty close to the vicinity.
Okay. Yeah. Not far at all.
Yeah. So I'm super excited because you're actually the first Fierce Calm story that we're featuring on the show. And I'm just a huge supporter and big lover of the Fierce Calm platform. I love what they're doing. I love that they're giving people to permission to share their stories and to, kind of take shame out of the equation, and also to just be seen and to be heard, to have people recognize that they're not alone, that things have happened to us in life, and that we're okay in this community of being able to share that out loud. I love everything that they're doing over at Fierce Calm.
Absolutely. Me too. And when they first asked me to share my story with them, I immediately agreed, because I think that that's sort of platform for radical honesty that they offer is very empowering. Mm-hmm. And I use my whole online presence in that way. I try to be as radically honest about what I've done, what I've been through, and what I'm doing now as I can be, because it's okay to have these I guess you could even say, like, shameful episodes. It's okay. It's okay that stuff happened, and it's helpful to share about it. Helpful for yourself and for the people reading it.
Yeah, same. I'm right there with you. The more we can share about it, the better. It gives us permission to make sense of it all. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's great. Let's dive in. So I want to hear more about your story, and yeah, let's get to the nuts and bolts of it. Tell me all about the past and how you got to where you're at now with your practice.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, I typically, when someone asks me a question like that, I frame it the typical way around what it was like before, what happened, and what it's like now. So, what it was like before was sort of a lifetime of addictive behavior that sort of even predated me. So addiction runs in my family. My mother actually, you could pretty much say, died from her addiction,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes back several generations in our family. This sort of disease. I myself managed to not use any drugs or alcohol at all until my senior year of high school. And then I
Mm-hmm.
started drinking and smoking weed. In college, I started doing more recreational drugs. I started flirting with ecstasy. And then I got into a pretty heavy cocaine addiction. Eventually, I sort of pinnacled with a spree through crystal methamphetamine that lasted for a few years. I actually like to say that fortunately, I finally graduated to the most intense way to do crystal meth, which is intravenously. And I say fortunately because it only took 6 months of that for me to burn down my whole life and hit a rock bottom and sort of have to start rebuilding. So that's the really quick story of my usage. So what happened to change it? Like I said, I hit this bottom from the meth usage where I kind of stole a car. I wouldn't say exactly stole a car, but
How do you
I rented a car.
how do you
Yeah,
kind
I
of steal
rent
a car?
I rented a car for a few days and ended up keeping it for 3 months. So, in the eyes of car rental administration, that's kind of like stealing a car. So, I had these people sending messages to my family and friends trying to locate me in this vehicle. And I think they were just on the verge of submitting it to the police as a grand theft auto. But fortunately, somehow I had the good sense at that moment to return this vehicle to them. So, sort of a side note to this is that I was actually living out of this vehicle. My ex and I at the time had rented this car. We'd also stolen some drugs, and we had driven this car and these drugs on a trip through a large swath of the southeast United States. And the drugs had just recently run out, and now the car had run out, and I was pretty much left with nothing. So I had to call family who got me home. They airlifted me home to North Carolina and sort of sheltered me while I took my first real baby steps into recovery.
Mm.
Um, so I did a little detox there, and then I started attending some 12-step meetings, and I still had a little back and forth with substances,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a couple relapses, and I wasn't fully committed to a 12-step path of recovery at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wasn't fully committed to a yogic path of recovery at that time. I was sort of just flirting with both.
Got it.
And I'd had some pretty significant forays into yoga prior to this rock bottom. I had done a couple of rehabs and they hadn't worked out for me. So I decided that I was going to actually go to India. And instead of going to rehab again, I was going to do a yoga teacher training.
Mm.
And this was in 2012. So I had done a month-long intensive that was mostly sober. But this was actually a fair amount of time before my rock bottom. I also, like I said, flirted with 12-step meetings quite a bit. But the only thing that eventually finally got me sober was a very strong combination of both 12-step recovery and, in particular for me, ashtanga yoga.
Mm.
So I feel like these two programs really multiply each other. And I don't think I'm the only person to have that experience. I think that yoga at times, the 12 steps is really effective for a lot of individuals. So yeah, I finally got my act together uh, through the process of working these two programs, the program of yoga and the program of recovery. Um, and since that time, things have really been amazing. I ended up in a 2-year apprenticeship with Tim Feldman and Keena McGregor at the Miami Life Center. And it, that program, more than anything else, really shaped who I am right now as an individual and as a teacher. Um, and it's really just opened up the world to me. The world of practice and the world of healing.
Why do you think that Ashtanga in itself, like, I mean, is there anything with that lineage in general or that program, like what made it so impactful for you?
Yeah, hands down, it's the same thing as AA or any 12-step fellowship, and that's that they expect you to be there every single day.
Hmm.
I think that's it. Like in your first 90 days of a 12-step program, you're expected to be with your butt in that chair every day for 90 days because it takes a concentrated effort in order to start breaking the habits that you'd formed. And it's the same thing with Ashtanga yoga. With Ashtanga, there is this expectation that I should be there uh, 6 days a week to do the practice.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of other parallels. For instance, in 12-step yoga, 12-step recovery, you have your sponsor, right? Someone to hold you accountable.
Hmm.
And I think Ashtanga yoga really does something similar with the teacher-student relationship. I really felt a sense of responsibility to these people who were trying to help me.
And you felt like there was also like that accountability too, because you had, I mean, not only your teacher there, but also I'm sure other colleagues or other students, you know, around you as well, being in that same space. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something else that is really special in Ashtanga yoga is that there's this sense of parampara and lineage and community
Hmm.
that is really impactful.
Where do you think you'd be at if you didn't have yoga right now?
I I'd probably be dead.
Yeah,
That's not a joke. I mean,
I hear you.
I'd probably be dead.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel
be,
the same.
because my drug usage had really led me to a state of complete mental instability and physical breakdown. There wasn't much further down the line I could have gone.
What got it there? Like, what was, I mean, what drove you to that point to go down that far? Because I mean, you know, slamming math is a pretty, it's huge. It's intense.
Yeah, it is. It's incredibly intense. What drove me there? Well, by my nature, I'm very sensitive. So first of all, I'm very sensitive to the perceived wrongs and wounds of the world. And, I dealt with a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of things that I just didn't want to feel.
Mhm.
And I also dealt with a fair amount of sort of existential dread. So a lot of really big, profound questions about the nature of everything that often felt overwhelming, even from a very young age. So, for instance, I grew up I grew up in the home of my grandmother, but we were raised in this sort of low income community that churches send buses out to collect children from and bring them to church. I attended regularly this one Pentecostal church who preached very strongly, like hellfire and brimstone. And I remember crying myself to sleep as a young child over the fear of that fate. So from a very young age, I had this sort of existential dread about what is life, what is after it. I really feel like that played into my drug usage, my escapism, and then also just sort of being, I don't know, a little self-absorbed, right? A little self-interested, a little terminally unique, we say. Yeah.
And I mean, okay, so we've gone through it, and there's so many parallels, I think, to a lot of our stories that have had, with a lot of us that have had addiction in our past, and have done a 12-step program and have then found yoga. There's a lot of similarities. When you see others going through the same thing, what is your piece of advice to them? Like when you see someone in that struggle, or when you see someone like going to that dark place, like what do you say to them?
So it's interesting timing, because I actually sent someone a message this morning, and the message is simple. If you fall off the wagon, if you fall off any wagon, the most important thing you can do is get right back on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you fall off the yoga wagon, the most important thing you can do is start back again as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
If you fall off the 90 and 90 program, if you get 25 days and then you have a relapse, that can feel really terrible and overwhelming and like you've lost. But the most important thing you can do is just come back as soon as possible, so that you don't lose any more momentum, right? Because I do think that there is a sense of momentum that has to happen behind a recovery, or behind a practice, or behind any sort of commitment.
You gotta have something going there as well. And also too, like not being alone in it, like having that community behind it is also really great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why this morning I sent that message, because I know this person was surely feeling alone, was surely feeling like they had failed themselves or the people who they'd made commitments to.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, it's nothing that any of us who've ever tried to do anything important haven't experienced.
What about the yoga part of it? Would you also invite that person to start a yoga practice?
Yeah, this person is actually in my Mysore room here.
Oh,
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So this person is actually working a couple of different fronts. So yeah, absolutely. I strongly recommend multiplying the two by each other, especially for people like me who, my biggest drawback for many years in committing to a 12-step program was my resistance to the word God. That is right there, plain and simple, in the 12 steps.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this sometimes, but it's a little bit odd that my life and my recovery has centered around two seemingly God-focused programs. But I'm a big believer in sort of taking what you need and leaving the rest. And my yoga practice really allowed me to understand the 12 steps in a less dogmatic way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
I think for a long time, and even now, to be perfectly honest, I have a little bit of distrust about the 12-step methodology, wherein it says God as you see it. I do think that there's really a sort of Judeo-Christian underpinning to a lot of the program.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, it's there.
In just where the program came from,
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. There's no way around that.
And I've had discussions with people in the past who fervently believe that it is truly not a Judeo-Christian program, but I just believe that it is, and that's a struggle for me.
Mm-hmm.
But when I put the context more so towards the sort of Eastern, broader philosophical notions of what God might be or what creation might be, then it's a little easier for me to work the program. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up for even just people, not necessarily anyone that's listening to this and feels like they have a problem, but like it's just nice to break that part down and to, remove the dogmatic part of it. It's really anything that you believe is just bigger than yourself. It could be,
Yes.
universe, it could be Shiva,
Yes.
it could be anything. Like
Anything.
for us to think that we are the biggest out there is kind of foolish, like
and what's
the Big Bang, it could be.
Yes. And more so than any of that, like you mentioned dogmatic, like there's, in my mind, there's this sort of two sides of the coin where you could either be dogmatic or you could be pragmatic about it.
Right.
And I'd rather just be concerned with the parts that are actually livable.
Right.
And that's in the 12 steps, that's in yoga philosophy. I'm really interested in the parts that are actually livable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The things that are digestible that you can actually bring in every day.
The things that are actionable.
Yeah.
That you can do. And I think that if I do those things, if I do the things that are actionable, it's completely irrelevant what I do or do not think about God.
Yeah. Well, Joseph, I mean, I think you're a prime example of how yoga saves and how yoga can transform and really just give you a second opportunity and a second, like just another doorway to walk in through, that things, can get better, and they will get better, if you put in the work. And I mean, I'm super stoked that you found ashtanga, and I'm super stoked that you're here to share your story with us.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much for talking with me and letting me tell people about my journey.
Absolutely, man. We all need to hear it some more. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. And for the next part of the show, we're going to feature some stories that shed some light on the transformative effect of yoga and its ability to heal and transform. The first story we have is from Tasha Gomes. She shares how yoga taught her how to be aware, present, and intentional with movement, both physically and mentally, how these skills helped her overcome her diagnosis with lupus.
My name is Tasha. I'm a yoga teacher, forever student, and a program manager for a nonprofit agency. And this is my story. You look fine. You're young. You're athletic. I'm sure this is all just stress. Dismissals like this are what likely prolonged an eventual diagnosis of lupus. This autoimmune disorder was quietly attacking various organs in my body, simultaneously and angrily. When the right rheumatologist ran the right tests, we finally had a name for my stress. Unceremoniously, I was promised a chronic and unpredictable set of issues and handed a fistful of chronic prescriptions. This experience challenged my self-perception immediately. I am strong. I am in control. That is just who I am. It is who I have always been. Yet, here I was, tired, body racked with pain, mind teased by fear, and there was nothing I could do about the chaos. So I took my medicine, I saw the specialists, I went to work. I didn't talk about it, but I struggled, silently, never wanting my face to reflect my pain. My identity was splintering. The stress of the secret was exacerbating my flares. My need to appear strong was exacerbating my isolation. So I began to accept it. I was weak. I was broken. All I could do was breathe through the cracks. As it turns out, breathing is exactly what I needed to do. In my solitude, I returned to yoga. Aching joints and a new sense of frailty had taken me from my practice. Returning to yoga brought me back to my body and consolidated my identities. Returning to a teacher training program brought me into a position to help others do the same. I stopped taking those maintenance medications. I still have flares, but I've learned to use breath, movement,
The inflammation in the brain and nerve system was painful beyond anything imaginable and unrelenting. I had really no idea how to cope with that, and that my diagnosis, my illness, was incurable at the age of 24. Before the illness, I used to be an ambitious achiever, perfectionist, impatient, working 24 hours for my goals, never stopping. Then suddenly, I just had to learn to live in stillness, without judging myself for not being able to achieve in a society where we are judged by our achievements. I discovered I really had no idea of what real self-love was before I had to learn to love myself for just being. I'd practiced yoga for 11 years before the illness, and after a long hospitalization, I rediscovered yoga in a new way, beyond the physical asanas. I learned how to rebuild my strength from zero, learn how to breathe through everything, be gentle, learning acceptance and patience, gratefulness, non-comparison and non-judgment. I learned how to really listen to my body in a way I had never done before. I was learning to observe my wandering mind and to still my mind. Mindfulness and meditation transformed my way of thinking. I was changing. My practice changed together with me. No matter how physically challenging the practice I do today, I move from a different standpoint, with a new intention and inner peace, a moving meditation. My priority is always not how it looks, like in the past, but now it is how it feels. Yoga helped me realize my potential, providing inner strength and happiness no matter what I do or accomplish, and how strong the wind blows around me. By letting go of expectations, I now see all the new possibilities, taking nothing for granted. I'm happier than I've ever been, even if I live with chronic pain. It turns out, those years of illness, when I thought I was achieving nothing, I was really growing. Because of the way yoga helped me, I just had to become a yoga teacher. And helping people find inner peace in the midst of life challenges is the most rewarding thing in the world. Thank you so much for letting me share my story with you, and thank you for listening. Namaste.
And Fierce Calm collaboration. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I want to thank Joseph, Tasha, and Maria for sharing their stories. It's so vital that we come together and share our vulnerabilities and truths in order to inspire and empower each other. The Fierce Calm collaboration podcast will run about once a month, and the next episode will drop in the beginning of March. Thanks for joining us on today's session, and until the next